Yeah, yeah, me too. And so this, I did, I did want to get one other thing in here. Uh, you quoted the British pediatrician Donald Winnicott as talking about the deep, nameless qualities of
Hmm.
suffering
Right.
in
Yeah, I think those.
childhood
Yeah.
trauma, and you use the term primitive agonies.
Right. Well, he used that term, and I've read his work. Mark Epstein, who's a Buddhist psychiatrist, I don't know if he's been on your show or not, from New York, mentions that in the notion of Winnicott and primitive agonies. And I would relate it to in this way: a primitive agony, in my mind, again, Winnicott's the expert, not me, or Donald Colshet, not me. But there's something so profoundly deep, some other something so elemental, primitive within our very nature, with the darker, deeper parts of our soul, that when we have traumas of profound abuse, profound abandonment, profound being cast to, being rejected, or being finding ourselves on our own, as many immigrants do, as other kids who are abandoned, that taps something that's so deep that we can't, without knowing the term or what it actually means. It's just sort of, it's a vague, it's a vaguely felt, vaguely but powerfully felt psychic dynamic within ourselves, within the psyche that are what constantly there. And it's not that we have to live lives as victims. And it's not like we're being overwhelmed every day. But when we get tapped in that particular way at the hands of trauma, it has that lasting, almost like he's a primitive or a primordial kind of element of fear or sadness or rejection or abandonment. All those, any and all of those. That's the kind of stuff we in psychotherapy deal with. It's the kind of stuff we are trained, I think, into begin to understand intuitively, more so or on a feeling level than we can rationally. But sure as could be, I'm sure any therapist who's listening or analyst would say they've found the same in difficult cases where that imprint is there. And if primitive agonies is one of the ways of expressing that, as a call should would explain, that also accounts for why the splintering, why this certain parts of ourselves in childhood get splintered and stay in a sense of should be called a suspended state of animation within the psyche until we have the means through therapy or sometimes other means to begin to release that. I mentioned that with our son, who we adopted, and I saw he was 4 years old at the time we adopted, and he had gone through a tremendous amount of trauma, of neglect, and some kinds of abuse. I could see that in him, even though I hadn't had training as a therapist. I could see. I liken it to being like a miner trapped in a mine. How are we going to get that? How are we going to get that little child out? How do we get that wounded part out? Because there's a lot of defense mechanisms that want to keep those in place, and so that's the challenge of a therapist. I think is to help reduce those barriers, help lessen the degree to which uh, uh, either aggression on one side or depression on the other side. How we can begin to those are the hallmarks of the two sides of the coin of dissociation. How can we begin to lessen those so we can allow that split to find a way to rejoin or to heal or to become better integrated? Which does not mean eliminating memory of what happened, but it does mean not letting that fester alone and deeply within the psyche that is underlying so much of the malady we experience in our adult lives.
I'm so glad that you mentioned the adoption of your son. That's that's a major thing that we didn't
Yeah.
get around to discussing here. But you were not looking to adopt.
Mm.
Uh, it was like, in a way, the furthest thing from your mind, and it
Right.
circumstances kind of conspired that both you and your wife ended up feeling led to
Right.
adopt this young
Yeah.
kid who is now in college, I guess.
No, no, he's down. No, he's 34 years old. He lives in North Hollywood, and he's a video producer and editor. So no, he was an actor from the get go. Went to Cal Arts, and no, that's a clear case of love at first sight. It was just, we saw him and all those other things. We still didn't want to have any kids except for him. We were so pulled in as we are today. It's just as strong today as it was back then. Just how much we loved it, how much we just instantaneous. This was somebody we wanted to raise and have be a part of our lives for as long as we're alive. And that for sure is alive and true.
And this was another major synchronicity, I think,
Yeah.
the way that came together.